My name is Nick, and welcome to my channel, where I like to talk about scary stuff. Antlers is a dark horror drama about a boy in a small Oregon town who is harboring a dark secret. His teacher does her best to look out for him and uncover what his link is to a gruesome discovery in the woods. Antlers was directed by Scott Cooper and is based on a short story by Nick Antosca. Antlers was one of the big movies that was delayed over a year and a half due to the pandemic, and I feel like it's one of the movies that was hurt the most by that delay, because it seems like no one saw this damn movie but me, and whoever did see it, well, people are very split on it, and that makes for a very interesting conversation. It is way more fun to talk about love it or hate it movies, and while I can see why some people have problems with this movie, it just might be my favorite horror film of 2021. Let me start out by saying that this movie is a slow burn, and it really doesn't get around to its main conflict until about 2/3 of the way through the film. So if you don't want to hear anything that could remotely be a spoiler, you want to go in blind, see the movie for yourself, go watch it, then come back and finish the video, because this will contain minor spoilers for the characters and plot.
Can anyone give me an example of a myth or a story they're afraid of?
Antlers does a really good job of setting up exactly what it is, and in that way, I think that will determine whether or not this movie works for you. Early on, there is a scene in a classroom talking about folklore and fairy tales, and this movie feels like a folk tale of sorts while also being about folklore. It's the type of movie that I feel like I often complain should just be a short film, but Antlers feels like a full movie to me. In fact, my biggest complaint with it is that it feels like a trimmed down version of what it should be. Like, this feels like the studio-made theatrical cut. Like, some scenes of dialogue are choppy as if lines are missing. There is a portion of the film towards the end of the second act that feels very streamlined as if there are scenes missing. But ultimately, I'm okay with that. While I'm basically over here shouting from the rooftops, release the Cooper cut, I still like the movie we got. Normally, I would complain that a movie should be cut by a good 20 minutes, but for Antlers, I could have used an extra 20 minutes to sort of flesh out those gaps in the story. I like that this movie left me wanting more. It did that in the good way. Not like it was incomplete, but like I could have used a 4-hour miniseries version of this story. Let's talk about what Antlers is really about, because the relationship at the center of this movie is what I truly love about it. So to begin with, we're in this already depressing small town in Oregon. Lucas is this bullied boy, like preteen age or whatever, and in the beginning we see his dad is making meth in an abandoned mine when he is attacked by something in the darkness that sets up our conflict for the rest of the film. Both Lucas's dad Frank and his younger brother Aiden have been infected and locked themselves away in the attic, leaving Lucas to wander around town like a little serial killer, picking up dead animals to feed to his family. Jeremy T. Thomas truly is Lucas. Like, I'm gonna have a hard time disassociating him from this role if I see him in any other movie, because he just captures the essence of this disturbed but traumatized little kid so perfectly. Then we have Julia, Kerry Russell's character, and can we just talk for a moment about how great Kerry Russell is? Like, I've never even seen Felicity or The Americans, but I probably should, because I love her screen presence. I think she's so good, and she's so good here. It's so nice to see her playing the heroine in a horror film, and like an actual good one, and on top of that, she's playing a very strong and layered character who I love. So Julia left town to move to California and get married, but she has since gotten divorced and has retreated back to her hometown to live in her family house with her police officer brother Paul, played by Jesse Plemons. Much like Lucas, she has also lost everything and is just trying to rebuild her life as best as possible. We see through flashbacks that Julia suffered from abuse as a child, and it's very disturbing material, but I like that it doesn't go too far. Okay, there's just enough to give the character weight, but not so much that it gets too disturbing, you know? Julia sees what's going on with Lucas and she wants to help him. She even tries to reach out personally, but realizes there are much bigger problems that she cannot solve on her own. And this is when the movie transitions into another very interesting story beat that I really appreciate, because Julia talks to the principal, played by genre staple Amy Madigan, and doesn't get any help. She tries talking to her cop brother Paul, and he also can't help. And This movie ends up being about the way that systems fail people and what happens to those who fall through the cracks. Sure, it's all incredibly depressing and not even a little bit fun, but I like movies that dig into the gray area and deal with the harsh truths of the world, and Antlers does not hold back, okay? I will say I can understand some people finding this portion of the film to be a bit repetitive and defeating, but I feel like this really plays into the progression of Julia's arc that really propels her to do what she has to do given the circumstances. While I said I would be talking about minor spoilers, I haven't even gotten into the thing that this movie is really about, and you've probably already heard it marketed as a Wendigo film, and I feel like that's spoiling it, even just saying that, because sure, those elements are there from the beginning. It is such a slow build into becoming a creature feature that I want you to discover all that fun on your own. Personally, I know nothing about the Wendigo. This was my introduction, if you could even call it that, but the Wendigo is really used to tell this dark family horror story of addiction, and honestly, I think infusing a real monster into that story made it all the better. Now I just want to talk about Jesse Plemons because I have to. Like, I love Jesse Plemons. I think he's a great character actor. He's so fun whenever he shows up in anything, but this movie, I think, proves he can't necessarily, or he maybe isn't the best at some mainstream stuff. You know, like, he's given all this, like, cop dialogue, like, we found a 429 in the woods, and it was all teeth and fibers and bullshit, and it's just sort of like, you know, his delivery is just kind of flat, I would say, a little bit. And I don't know, he's just goofy. Like, did anyone else, I mean, everything I've seen him in, he's like just like a little goofy. And in this movie, there are moments where I feel like he's a little too goofy for as serious as the movie is. But then there are moments when he seems to be giving these lines more weight than they really deserve. So I'm half and half with Jesse Plemons in this movie. Like, I love him, but then there are moments where I go from taking the movie seriously to just like clapping at him for being a king of camp. But let's go back to me taking Antlers totally seriously and loving it. It's a down-home horror story that's all about the white trash problems of today. Mixing the harsh struggles and effects of addiction with classic creature vibes, it manages to be one of the best horror films of the year. For the concept, I'm going to give Antlers a 5 out of 5. I love Nick Antosca's story. For me, this is a great example of mixing social commentary and messaging into a simple story to create a maximally effective horror film. For the execution, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Again, I do feel like this is a bit of a dabbled with studio film, but I think Scott Cooper's direction still shines through. And this movie dares to be taken seriously, unlike so many other horror films of today, and I love it all the more for it. For the entertainment value, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5, which may sound a little low considering how high I am on the film overall, but it's a very dark and dreary and depressing movie. It's not one I'm going to want to throw on all the time, but given what it is, I think it's a very well-paced and enjoyable film that I can't see myself getting sick of anytime soon. As for my personal grade, I'm going to give Antlers a 4 out of 5. Not only was it worth the wait, but it's easily one of the best creature features and family horror films that I've seen in a while. I'm so excited to hear what you guys think of it, because this movie is so hit or miss and people are divided over it. I think it's a really interesting movie to talk about. I saw it twice, personally, to really solidify my feelings on it, and I can see how each scene in this movie will either land or not. So whatever you're thinking of this movie, whether you're into it, whether you're not into it, whether you're middle of the road about it, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video, especially if you made it all the way to the end. I know this is a very late review. This movie is, I mean, it's probably already on Blu-ray at this point. I don't know, but I really loved this movie. I had to talk about it. I had to see it a second time in order to really get my thoughts together, and that's one reason why I haven't been really up to date with a lot of more recent reviews, because I found that, you know, I make a review and sometimes I change my mind. Sometimes I'm quick to film a review to get it out, and I want to take my time. I really want to get my thoughts together and then share them with you, because there are a couple movies from this year, one in particular, that I really need to re-review because thoughts have changed. But thank you again so much if you made it this far. If you're not already, feel free to follow me on Instagram and Letterboxd for more movie recommendations. That's it for this video, but I won't stop you from watching another.